Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going to be getting a little bit loony with today's game, Looney Tunes Back in Action, TAZmania. Released in 2003 by Mattel, this was brought out to coincide with the movie Looney Tunes Back in Action hitting cinemas. And as you can see, Mattel's decided to focus on Taz for this game, which is a really strange choice, because out of an hour and 33 minutes that Looney Tunes Back in Action runs for, Taz himself actually only appears on screen for a grand total of 53 seconds.
Pardon.
So quite why they decided to theme or design this game around Taz and breaking out of his cage is completely beyond me. If I was Mattel and I was making a game based on the Looney Tunes Back in Action movie, I would be wanting to build it around the temple of the blue monkey. That place is filled with traps and absolutely crying out for an action game to go with it. But instead they decided to go with Taz and his cage, who appears in exactly one scene.
That's a good boy.
It really is a strange choice. It kind of makes me think that they already had this game in the works already with something else, and they've decided to basically skin it as Taz in order to go with this movie.
Exactly.
But let's forget the strange design choices for a moment and focus on the actual game here itself. The box art has got a nice big picture of Taz and Sylvester and Bugs here, and we've got a photograph of the game being played. And our child model here really seems to be over-egging it and trying to win the challenge of most expressive face on a board game box.
Whoa!
So we have, of course, got a window here so that when it was in its packaging, you could see the actual Taz ball up nice and close, which would work nicely on a shop shelf, but for storing it, the extra bulge that you're going to get here is going to make this a bit of a pain. On the back here, it's much nicer because it's got some nice vibrant colours on here. This purple and the orange and the green and the blue really go nicely together to pop. Just look at his face on this one. Basically, the premise of this game is that Taz is in his cage trying to break out, and it's up to you to try to make sure that he doesn't break out on your side. It's a really simple and quick game for 2 to 4 players, but it's actually really nice. I like it. Let's have a look in closer detail.
To the duck cave.
For Taz himself, we have got this ball, and this is really strong and sturdy, and it's also been nicely made because this paint is not going to chip. If you're anything like me, this thing is going to end up getting dropped on the floor as it moves about everywhere, and thankfully it is not going to chip. It's also not going to break. It is really strong and sturdy. Obviously, for this game to work, he has to be a ball, and he cannot have particularly high three-dimensional features here, because then that wouldn't be able to roll very well. The nose on Taz here is the activation button. If I press that in, it then begins the motor inside it, and you can see there he is going to start to move. In order to get this ready and working, you need to open him up by unscrewing the screw here and inserting a battery. Now, it's a little bit of a pain having a screw, because if you want to store this, you're going to have to unscrew it to take the battery out. so that it does not leak. But this game really would not work without the screw. You really need this to be held firmly together so that it will work properly. And you can see here, this is simply a battery connected to a motor which will turn this whole section, and it's got an offset weight so that when it spins, it's going to be offset weight moving around, which is going to basically make him wobble and move around in a really, really chaotic and erratic manner. We've got the bars for Taz's cage, and these come in green, yellow and red, and these are really, really nicely flexible, so these are not going to snap through misuse. So the cage itself for Taz is made from several pieces. We start with the bottom here, which is really nice and sturdy, a really good solid design, and you can see it's got a slight dimple in it here on the bottom, and that means that that is going to rock around and move slightly as Taz is moving around in his cage, and that is going to make it even more unpredictable and more random. We want to take this cage and then we're going to add the 4 corners to it, and they just snap in place quite easily there, and we're starting to build it up. We then take the top piece here, and those corner pieces just slot into here, and that, once it's in place, is really sturdy. It's not the easiest thing in order to line up properly the pegs with the holes, but that is now really sturdy and is not going to go anywhere. But it's really nice, and I like the sculpting on here with these kind of like bite or claw marks on here, and the rivets on the metal here on the top and bottom add nice detail. We can then take our player pieces and connect them onto whichever side of the cage we want. Now these have got little pegs on them which are spring loaded, which is a really nice feature because it means when you're trying to get them in, they are not going to snap.
Oh, I've hit rock bottom.
These of course flip up and down really easily, which you definitely want for this game. You might only have 2 people playing this, in which case you don't want Taz escaping out of one of the sides which is unguarded. In that case, we've got this special piece which we can slot in place, and once that's in place, it's going to stop Taz from getting out of there. And of course these pieces can be slotted into any side at all, but if you're playing 2 players, you probably want to be opposite each other for the best game. Now I really like these bars, particularly how they are bent here. It reminds me a lot of the original packaging for Boglins.
Get me out of this cage right now!
Once you're all set up, it's then up to each player to configure the bars on their side of the cage in whatever way they want. Now to do this, you're going to need 2 yellow bars, 2 red bars, 2 green bars, and 1 more bar of any colour of your choice. Now, how you put those bars in is up to you. The only rule when you're putting bars in is that you cannot have 2 bars going into the same slot, either like that or like that. As long as they are in different slots, you can have them however you want. You can have them going just straight up and down, or you can crisscross them in order to try to add strength. But while you are adding strength, you have to also be careful that you're not leaving large gaps where there are no bars and where Taz might escape. It can be quite interesting in this game just to play around with configurations to see just how strong you can make that and just how much space you can cover up with bars. You could do it completely at random, but I think there's definitely some strategy and tactics which could come into it at this point. Once you're happy with your configuration, you flip your piece back up into place and you are ready to go.
Yikes!
Of course, in a 4-player game, you're going to end up with bars all over the place in lots and lots of different configurations, and it's going to be rather colourful. Once you're happy with your cage, it's then going to be time to put Taz inside and activate him and see if he can bust out.
Isn't it about time to enjoy a Frosty Cold soda at the concession stand?
As Taz is rolling around trying to escape out of the cage, you're going to take it in turns rolling the dice. If you roll a green, then you get to remove a green bar from any other player. If you roll a yellow, you can remove a yellow bar. If you roll a red, you can remove a red bar. If you roll this side of the dice, then you can remove any bar colour of your choice from any other player. If you roll a cross, then unfortunately you don't get to take any bars out and you basically miss a turn and it goes on to the next player. So of course when you're trying to remove bars, you're trying to strategically make the other player's side as absolutely weak and structurally weak as you can, because you want to get Taz to escape out of their side so that they are going to get flattened, because you want them to get flattened before you do. Like most games that involve dice, this has got a strong luck element, but I do think that there is an element of strategy in here when it comes to the bars. Whether it's your arrangement of the bars on your side of the cage initially, or whether it's the bars that you pull out on somebody else's side. There's not a lot of strategy or tactics involved here, but it definitely makes it more interesting and gives you something to think about when you're playing this. And it's a really, really quick-paced game. You have got to move fast rolling that dice because you really, really want to get the other player's bars out of their cage before they get the bars out of your side. And when you're rolling colours that are not there, or getting a cross on the dice that you don't get a go, you're going to start getting quite frantic in this. And it really, really works well. The mechanism on Taz rolling about, crashing about into those bars works really nicely. And the bars themselves have a really nice flexibility and spring to them, which really gives a sense of urgency when you see Taz starting to push against them. The Taz ball itself works really, really well, moving around randomly, and there is no predictability to it, and it crashes all over the place. It's really, really good, and it's a really nice design. I would really like to see the Taz ball used in an actual board game though, not necessarily as Taz, but just that concept I think would work quite well. If you had a very flat board with possibly raised sections which would be safe areas where you could have a choice to go onto those, or you could go quicker through the flat areas. I think this would be quite an interesting idea. And for me, being a horror fan, I think this would be a brilliant game if you did a Critters-based board game. That way you can take the giant Critters ball from Critters 2 and you could have that crashing around Grover's Bend with perhaps abandoned cars or small sheds that you could jump on top of in order to be safe from the Critter ball. That would be a game I would find really interesting and would definitely pay money for.
That's my plan in a nutshell.
This game, as it is though, I really do like it. It's fast, but it is a really fun one that you really do get into. If you can find it, it's pretty cheap. I got this one for about £3 plus postage on eBay, so it's not one that is going to cost you a lot. And if you can get it at that kind of price, it's a definite recommendation for me. It's going to be a quick filler game for your board game nights, but it is one that I think that you are definitely going to enjoy. Until next time, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.
Go home, folks.